Hey everybody, welcome back to Fab Friday. Natalie Cutler-Welsh here. We are doing our Up Your Brave Fab Friday today with my good friend Dr. Sharon Walt. Hey Sharon.
Hi.
So good to see you today. You know, you guys, today is massive. Well, this week is massive. It's Mental Health Awareness Week here in New Zealand. And obviously not something that we want to only think about one week, but it's a major concern. My friend Otila Osborne, she's down in Wellington. She sent me a link the other day and she said, hey, can you get people to fill out this survey? Because she's doing her master's. And she said, you know, in New Zealand, we are number one in developing countries. We are number one in suicide. We are number two for bullying and number three for online bullying. These are not stats that we are proud of. And you guys, anyone who knows me probably will know that I get pretty fired up around suicide and depression and the statistics in New Zealand. So this is something I'm really, really happy to make an impact in as much as possible. That's part of the reason I did my Impact Entrepreneurs series last year. It's part of the reason I started my Up Your Brave live stream series. If you guys haven't seen those, nataliecutlerwelsh.com/video series. It's all about helping to raise the state of resilience, health, and happiness in New Zealand. I'm a super happy person, and I know that not everyone's going to always feel pumped up and happy. That's not the goal. Happiness is not the goal, but changing these statistics is a definite must. And I'm so intent on making a shift. And anyone that wants to help me on this journey, get in touch. Let's do what we can. Yes, Steph, thank you. It is so terrible. But today we're actually going to zero in on a certain element of mental health. I chatted with one of my Canadian friends. She actually lives in America, and she's got a chronic illness. So she's got a compromised immune system. And that plus COVID means that she literally has seen nobody other than her immediate, like her son and her husband, for 8 months. So Dr. Sharon, I want to dive in at some point into like the mental health side of, having a compromised immune system and what you can do to kind of look after yourself. But first, you guys, I'm going to read a little bit about Dr. Sharon, and then we're going to dive into mental health and chronic illness as a specific niche topic. So here we go. Dr. Sharon today is going to share some of her clean protocol. Sharon Walt, like me, is Canadian. She's born but has been visiting and living in many countries over 3 decades. Sharon loves to travel, and her career path has zigzagged and taken her on very many trajectories. Specifically, she was a systems design engineer where she honed her analytical and troubleshooting skills, as well as developing the ability to analyze a situation holistically. I love how you've taken the sciencey side of your mind, and now you're helping people with their health and specifically with Hashimoto's. So I'm going to dive into that as well. She completed her doctorate in applied health sciences, specializing in human movement, and spent many years as an academic teaching, speaking, and conducting research, and learned how to write scientific articles. Well, today we're going to dive a little bit more into your story. We're going to hear some tips, and specifically, I'm excited to hear about this clean protocol because I know it's helping people around the world at the moment. Welcome, Dr. Sharon.
Thanks, Nat. I am really thrilled to be here. So thank you for giving me a chance to talk about aspects of this really important topic. Should I just dive right in here?
Yeah, you know what? Give us a little bit more of the backstory on how do you help people and how did you get to this point?
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, I was an academic for a while, and then because of issues with my own thyroid, which actually wasn't diagnosed at the time, I quit that career path, and while I was healing, found out more about health coaching. So over the next couple of years, I became a certified health coach and then a certified functional medicine health coach. And it was when I was just even starting out on that I kept running into all these women with Hashimoto's. Now, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disorder that affects the thyroid gland. Now, the thyroid is you can think of it as the gas pedal for the body. And if something goes wrong with that, then all parts of your body are going to be compromised. It affects over 10% of all women at some point in their lives. And so we're talking about a huge number of people. And unfortunately, traditional medicine does not address the root cause. It's really good at muting some of the symptoms. But unfortunately, with an autoimmune condition, once you have one, if you don't address the root cause of it and start healing, you have up to a 30% chance of acquiring another autoimmune disorders. So if you already have Hashimoto's, can you even imagine what it would be like to then develop lupus or rheumatoid arthritis or even psoriasis? Quite frankly, I can't even imagine what that's like. And so that's why I'm my focus has been on helping people address the root cause to get to true healing and work from there. Now, it's not a short journey at all. It does take some time because the triggers for it can be quite widespread. So just identifying the individual triggers, because everyone's experience or everyone's development of a chronic disease, whether it's an autoimmune or any other type of chronic disease, is very much their own. So there's no one size fits all. There's not going to be, and more particularly, there isn't going to be a magic pill. There's not going to be a magic supplement or superfood that is going to heal. I just wanted to, one of the main concepts that I live by here.
Yeah, sure. Hey, one thing I wanted to ask you, actually, someone got a question here. Can you explain the term functional medicine? You mentioned it was one of your qualifications. Not everyone knows what that means. So can you break that down?
Oh, absolutely. I'd be thrilled to. Functional medicine is a series of practices that focuses on addressing the root cause. So, I mean, you can address the symptoms of things, but you're not going to solve the problem. And I mean, there is room for addressing a symptom because sometimes you really want to get someone a quick start, at least to start them, giving them the energy and make them realize that, yes, there is a way forward. But ultimately, you've got to address what's causing it. And some of the things that I want to talk about today, the root causes towards some aspects of mental health are actually the same things as that will induce a chronic disease. And so there are things that we can do about it. So that's what functional medicine is all about. There are more and more people getting into functional medicine. Unfortunately, our more traditional medical system, not so much our doctors, but our medical system does not work towards that, because it doesn't have the time. I mean, you can't figure out what the root cause of something is if you've only got a 15 or 20-minute consultation. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work that way. So
I think it's interesting that you point that out, like the link between emotions and physical well-being. I think a lot of traditional medical people will think, yeah, when you're injured, it can cause mental health issues, because you're depressed and you're really upset about it and you can't work and perform at the same level. Yes, that's true. But what you're saying is the flip side is also our mindset and mental health, like that can also, in our emotions, can also present and show up in physical form. So it's not just, when you're injured, then you're sad. It's more than that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for so long, we've considered what we think or what's going in our mind as totally separate from what's going on in our body, like sorting out the mental, emotional, and saying, well, yes, it's separate from the physical. And no, they are intimately intertwined. So just to give you an example here, there are certain things that we can eat. Let me back up. Let's say someone has a yeast overgrowth in their digestive system. So it's normally called SIBO. So yeast live on sugar. They love sugar. So when you have a yeast overgrowth, you are going to be having sugar cravings all the time. So you can see that direct link to your brain. You said you're searching for sugar. But we also notice that someone with SIBO can also go into rages because in their search for sugar. This isn't unusual at all. So you can see right there what's going on in the gut. And this is where fundamentally almost everything happens. I mean, most of our immune system and all of our digestive capabilities that provide all of our nutrients, it's all in the gut. So if something's going wrong there, it's affecting everything, but it also affects the mind. And the point that you were making is that, yes, how we're feeling, the thoughts that we're thinking are also going to be reflected in our physical state. And in particular, when we get stressed, so especially under chronic stress, we produce a stress hormone called cortisol. Now, when we have too much cortisol going, it actually directly affects the function of the thyroid. So then that starts this whole triggering effect, from there. So that's just having too much stress. And that's ultimately the trigger there. So you can't really separate a mental, emotional from physical health. And so what I try to do in my clean protocol and actually working with my clients, first off, you look at a person holistically, not just what's going on physically, you look what's going on in their life. Some of the easiest changes to make happen to do with some of the physical aspects. So that's looking at what we're eating. And that's probably one of the biggest triggers there. If we can clean up our eating, and that's the first part of my clean protocol, that would be the C, standing for cleaning up your eating.
Yeah.
You're not only providing your body with the nutrients it needs, but you're also cutting out the toxins that are coming in some of the foods, especially processed foods. Getting back to one concept that I wanted to get to make people aware of is that unless your body has some type of irreversible or permanent tissue damage, it's working fine. Even with a chronic disorder, it's working the way it's supposed to, given the environment that you've provided for it. So if you provide the right environment, so giving it good food, keeping your stress levels down, getting enough sleep, all of these things, then yes, your body is going to start to thrive again. Okay, so I think a lot of people think, oh, I've got a chronic disease, my body's broken, and you start having this adversarial relationship with your body, and it's the furthest from the truth. And it's not that I'm laying blame here. It's not a blame thing. It is more a responsibility. But things like that take time for the body to start thriving again.
And maybe is it also interpretation? Like if you have curiosity, I wonder what my body's trying to tell me. You wonder if, people talk a lot about that when they have a recurring injury. In fact, I had someone yesterday saying that their child had this recurring injury, and I was, and she's asking about the medical side of it to my family, who's very medical, and straight away I'm like, I wonder what the emotional meaning of this injury is. And then I messaged one of my friends who knows all about that stuff, and I find it's quite interesting. We've got a new person asking, or another person asking a question here about the gut health as well. So glad that you brought up the gut. Lots of focus on that at the moment. If you have time, a moment later on in the interview, can you say why you focus on the thyroid? I'm aware this might come out over the interview. So if you want to dive into that, one thing I'll say about the thyroid that I do know, that I heard someone say at one time, they said, if you have a habit of pushing down your emotions, welcome to thyroid problems.
Yes, and that happens a lot. And one of the reasons for that is when you start pushing things down, you actually are generating more stress in your life anytime you try to cover something over. And I know from my issues with stress, and this is probably the thing that got me onto functional medicine, is I had so much stress that was causing so much anxiety that I went to talk to some counselors. Both the counselors said, oh, you need to be on medication. And I had never considered that before, but I had two separate people tell me that. So I went to my GP and asked her about it. And she said, okay, well, yes, we will try this. And to her credit, she's very, very good. She monitored me over the amount of time that I had. Well, the interesting thing is that, yes, under the medication, I had no anxiety, but I was pretty much walking around like a zombie. Now, the problem was the fact that I hadn't laughed in a year. And that's where I know that there's something seriously wrong here. But then I started sleeping, and I was sleeping like 18, 20 hours a day. And took some blood tests, measured my cortisol levels were right off the chart. So cortisol, remember, is a stress hormone. So even though I couldn't feel the anxiety that had actually been tamped down, suppressed, it's still full blown there. And that's what was causing all the problems. So that's what made me start thinking about, okay, you've got to stop looking at just symptom relief here, and let's start focusing on what the root cause. And for me, the root cause was workplace stress that I could not resolve. And so that's why I left. And I'm actually quite grateful that I did. It took me a long time to realize that, but it's got me into a new career where I know that I can make an impact and help people. Now, one of the questions that came up was why the focus on the thyroid? And I think it's because that's where people need the most help. Because traditional medicine, if you got a thyroid condition, they will give you thyroid medication that will help with thyroid hormones. The problem is with something like Hashimoto's, it's an autoimmune condition. So the problem is with your immune system. It's the thyroid is just an innocent bystander. So dealing with the thyroid is not doing anything at all to look at what the root cause, which is an overreactive immune system. And that's why I think it's the combination of so many women, and to a certain amount men as well. It's just, it seems to hit more women. There's so many, like 10%, that's huge. And they're not given a way to go forward to heal it. They're just masking the symptoms. So hopefully that answered the question a little bit.
Yeah, and then Steph, thank you so much, Charlene, for your question. We can't see your name. If you're in a private group, it just protects your anonymity, so that's why we can't see your name. Steph is asking us, are thyroid issues more of a female thing? I can't think of a man who has one. Who has it?
That's a really, really good question. I have run into men with Hashimoto's. They will also have thyroid conditions, but it may be more of an issue that men don't tend to go to the doctors to talk about this. Plus, it can be a hard thing to diagnose because the symptoms are so diverse. I mean, you have emotional symptoms, you can have depression, anxiety, muscle aches and pains, brain fog, all kinds of, like, it's quite diverse. For someone to take a look at all of these and say, oh, I think you've got a thyroid problem. I mean, that takes someone who's actually run into it quite a bit for them to diagnose it that way. So it may be that there's just as many men as women. They're just not reporting it as much.
Interesting. And Steph is also asking, when they do your bloods, is it standard to include cortisol levels?
Probably not. I mean, here in this country, in New Zealand, we have enough trouble just trying to get a full panel of thyroid tests being done.
Yeah.
And the thing is with cortisol, you can't just take it once during the day because your cortisol levels are going to fluctuate probably by 200 or 300% throughout the course of a day. So it's really important that if you're only going to take it once, that you take it at a particular time of the day. But more importantly, you need to take it over several times. And that's a particular type of cortisol testing I would refer to as one of the functional tests. And you have to go to a private lab to get that done. So a one-off cortisol test doesn't really mean that much.
I know that when you work with people, Dr. Sharon, one of the things you do is you have them get their bloods done, and I think you do like a comparison. So you always get it done at the start, so you know where your starting point is. Now, is that something that you get them to do? Because I know you also work with people virtually, like in different countries even. Do you get them to go and get their own bloods done, and then they send it through to you? How does that work?
Yeah, in general, blood tests are pretty normal to get done, especially if you're doing a yearly checkup, and they are your information. So you should always be able to get a copy of it. And you actually always should have a copy of it so that you can check yourself to see what the changes are. And so what I would routinely do, I have one of my initial programs, my Habits and History program, is to get people to fill out a pretty comprehensive health history so I can track when their symptoms start, what their symptoms are. But I also like to have the blood tests, and especially if they can give me the blood test for the past couple of years, and then I can track that. Now, the difference with my interpretation and a lot of GPs' interpretation is that the reference level that the GPs use is actually quite a bit larger than the reference levels that I use. And that has to do with the way that the reference levels are typically done. So without going into huge amounts of detail here, that the reference levels, normally they would take 95% of people who are asymptomatic and then chart the difference in the levels. And so that if you fall within that, they consider, well, you're okay. The problem is that being asymptomatic is not the same thing as being healthy. So there are other reference levels that actually look at healthy people who are out active and doing things and enjoying life, look at theirs and say, okay, this is what we mean by healthy. And if you're, starting to go beyond that, then that's what we have to look at. And so those are types of the interpretations. Because quite frankly, on some of them, if you're near the the edge of a reference level. What's the difference between that one point that puts you just on the edge or puts you right on outside? You want to see what the change is. You want to see, well, are things getting worse or are they getting better? So looking at the trends.
So
Sorry, that was longer.
There'll be some people listening today that either have a chronic illness, or someone in their family does, or there might even be people that are thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted, I'm always moody or whatever, and they might be thinking, I've never thought about it before, that maybe I actually have a chronic illness or an autoimmune condition. I mean, what are your comments on that? How do people, take the first step to figure out what is going on?
Okay, well, it brings up a really good point there, whether the diagnosis is as important as starting to put in steps to get yourself healthy again. I mean, it's nice if you do suspect a thyroid condition, so that could be, well, you've got weight gain that you can't deal with, and plus all those other symptoms that I talked about earlier. You can go to the doctor to get it diagnosed, and it would be interesting to know whether it is a problem with the thyroid or whether it's a problem with the immune system. And it's just a matter of blood tests to sort that out. Once you know that, then that gives you a little bit more of an indication what you should do. But in many cases, the first steps you can start doing yourself to build your own resilience. And this is whether we're talking about your physical health or your mental health, because remember, they're intertwined. And yeah, exactly. So the first thing to do, clean up your eating, start eating whole foods. And I know that's something that we all know we should be doing, but still, we still run out to get fast foods, or we reach for the pre-made cookies or pre-made meals. And a lot of them have a lot of preservatives. They are laden with toxins that can be inducing food sensitivities to us. Plus, it's what they're bringing to the table, it's what they're not bringing to the table. So with whole foods, especially more vegetables, and we should be eating more vegetables, it's the phytonutrients, not just the vitamins and minerals, but the phytonutrients in itself actually can send signals to our genetic background, to our DNA, to turn on some good, healthy pathways, biochemical pathways that will help us with good health. Now, at the same time, what we call those tags on our DNA can be turned off or on depending on the type of food that we're eating. So if we're eating something that's got a toxin or preservative, whatever in it, a bad fat or too much sugar, yes, that can actually turn off, so we express our DNA in a different way. Another tip, and this would be the L part of my clean protocol, would be listen to your body. Look at your symptoms. Honestly, this is something I talked about in one of my Facebook Lives, is that your symptoms are a gift. Now, sometimes that can be a little hard to take that one on, but your body's trying to tell you something. So if it's if you get a headache maybe once every 2 years, it's probably not a big deal. But if you're getting it continually, it's telling you something. So I know that a lot of us want to leap right in and just take some ibuprofen or something like that, but it's going to keep recurring. And that was one of the comments that you brought out, is that if you have something that's recurring, your body's trying to tell you something. And so in terms of getting headaches, it could be, am I not getting enough water? Am I getting too much stress? That's actually affecting my muscles up here. That's causing the headaches there. You have to kind of think, what are all the things that are going on? And then start making the change. So what can you do to actually change your environment and provide what the body needs to thrive? So,
is the E the environment in your acronym?
Yeah. So the E is the environment. So that's again, I mentioned before in that one basic concept, your body's going to thrive or not depending on the environment that you provide for it. Yeah. But on a much larger level, you're looking at the physical environment, in particular toxins. And that is such a big thing right now, because honestly, we are developing and producing hundreds of thousands of new chemicals every year. A lot of them the body does not tolerate because it doesn't recognize it. So it's going to prime our immune system to be overreactive. So it's things like looking what's in our water, what's in our food, what's in the air that we're breathing. And some of those can be a little hard to deal with, but there are lots and lots of information out there on how we can start cleaning up our own personal environments.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, looking at what's in and on, what we put in and on our body, including lotion or, body wash, and like, what is it? What brand? Like, what is it made from? How many extra numbers and crazy words are in there? Definitely. In terms of environment, do you also consider nature? Like, I know I heard a lot of my beautiful clients and my friends talk about nature is medicine. Like, do you talk a little bit about the impact? Obviously, nature has a big impact on mental health, but in terms of your acronym, is environment also like getting out into nature and that type of thing?
I think for most of us, it has a really calming part. So that's actually part of our environment. What are you doing to actually calm the body down?
Mm.
Plus, there is, the fresh air, the ability to connect with other people. So that's also part of our environment, because we need to look at things holistically.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit that that's one of the things that I really, really enjoy, is just getting out into the wild. Just kind of calms me down. It grounds me. And I mean, that's just me personally, but I think that that's important for a lot of people. I think during our recent lockdown, where we really couldn't get out and do anything, we saw a lot of people out starting to walk again. And what was nicer, because we didn't have as many cars and that going around, you can actually hear the birds singing. And I actually find that that's something particularly to be grateful for. I just find that really calming. But people will find their own ways of relaxing. And that's the main thing. What is it that you can do to relax? So that's, again, part of the environment. The
I'm
next
ask
part
a question to the audience at the moment. Actually, that's a great question. What is something that you can do? So in terms of, what is something you can do to calm your own environment and to calm those stress levels for yourself? We've been talking about cortisol. So go ahead and comment if you're game. So if you're watching us live or you're watching us later, go ahead and comment. What is something that you can do or that you currently do to create a calm environment? For myself, I'm such a go-getter. I'm so busy with like tons of things and projects on the go. But I definitely take time. Like, I love a hot bath, that environment. So I love water as long as it's really warm. And I love just being like having my own space and my own time in a hot bath, probably once a week, depending on the situation with the water supplies. That would be my go-to. Or in the afternoon, I'll go to the bedroom, and it's really sunny when the sun goes. Our house is all north facing, so it's amazing. But at the end of the day, it's in our bedroom, and I like get so excited, give the kids their snacks, sort them out, go into my bedroom, and I'll do some more. I'm still working, but I've changed my environment because now my office is shady and I want to be in the sunny. I'm like a cat. I follow the sun. And so I don't know if that counts, but for me, that's what I would do. And that changes my mindset, my mental health, because I make intention about the spaces that I'm spending time in. I'm doing this call upstairs today because I love the sun and my office is not as sunny. So I'm just up here, which I think is important. So I'd love to see what you guys can comment on. What are you doing to change your environment, to calm yourself and to keep your stress levels down? I've got a few more questions coming in. So I haven't forgotten about your question about keto, Charlene, that you asked. And someone else was just saying, yeah, think about what's in our cleaning products and our beauty products. Definitely. You were going to go in, I'm going to come back to the keto question, but you were going to go into your next one, which is A.
And so that's taking consistent action, because part of this in creating a thriving environment means breaking old habits and building new habits. And that is the hardest thing that I think we'll ever do. So it takes taking consistent action and making things easier on yourself. Don't rely on willpower. I mean, that's a surefire way of failing. So prime yourself. If you're wanting to start eating healthier snacks, have them pre-made. Like, already cut up the celery and the carrot sticks or whatever. Keep them already cut up in the fridge, because that means that's the easy solution. It's so much easier than to say, oh, I want a snack. Oh, I've got to cut it all up and wash it and all that. Oh, I'll just go grab the cookies here because that's so much easier. So it's just finding ways to make it easier to break the old habits and replace them with good habits. So that's the whole thing. But you need to take consistent action for a long time. This isn't a quick fix at all. And it's not like you're going on a diet, because going on a diet means that at some point in time you're coming off of it. No, this is a lifestyle change. This is forever. So.
Yeah, which is kind of intimidating and daunting at the same time, but it's like, this is a journey and you're embracing it and you're just be like, this is how we're going to roll. So speaking of which, I'm just going to take us back now to this question, because some people do jump on this and then they jump off, or maybe not. Let's talk about keto. What are your thoughts on keto, which is a very in at the moment? People seem to be having success, especially around shifting weight. Any comments?
Yeah, I really don't promote any particular diet, and some people will, especially if they're trying to shift weight. Yeah, I totally understand that. The thing is, it's not a particular, any diet that focuses on removing a major food group from your diet is not a long-term solution. At best, it's a short-term solution. Remember, your body needs fats in its diet. It needs carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are our energy source. Fats we need for our hormones and for so many other things, and proteins as well. Now, the problem with keto diets, if you get rid of so many of your carbohydrates, is that you, after a while, you are going to have some problems with energy production. So it's a short-term fix, and that's with so many of the very specific diets. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, one size does not fit all. I mean, I've mentioned that before, but in particular, because of the differences in your lifestyle and people's genetic makeup, you're going to respond to different combinations of your proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So I know of people who are elite athletes who are vegans and can operate on much lower level of protein, but not everybody can. Sometimes you need much more protein in order to thrive, and that's an individual thing. And unfortunately, there's no one thing that you can, other than trial and error, to figure out. If you're doing something and your energy levels are down, and this is what I mean by you really have to track your symptoms, really listen to what your body is telling you. If you're not getting the energy, then you need to switch it up and probably have a little bit more balance in your diet. So,
but it definitely, people see the results quite quick, which I think they like.
Yeah, and one of the things is, remember, not all carbohydrates are the same. So if one major classification is high glycemic carbs and low glycemic carbs. Now, I've got no problem with people cutting out a lot of high glycemic carbs, because those are things like your pastas and your breads, and those dump a lot of digested sugar into your bloodstream all at once. And that means you trigger insulin, and it takes it out and it goes and stores it as fat. Okay, so that's where if you remove the high glycemic carbs from your diet, yeah, you're going to lose some weight because they're not being stored as fat. And then you can use your other storages as the energy that you need. But it's like not all carbs are the same. So you actually do need some of them. But switch them over. Get rid of the breads and the pastas and that, and focus on your green leafy veggies and some of your other things as well. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to take you away from the food and back to the N, which is, I think, the final in your acronym of clean.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how can people find out more? How can they work with you and that type of stuff?
Okay. So N is basically nurture yourself. Honestly, be kind to yourself. This is not a short journey. It can be a longer journey. I said trying to figure out what it is that is triggering what's going on in your body can take a little bit of time. So just relax and know that you're doing the best, and start doing the types of things like you were mentioning about the hot bath. So that part of nurturing yourself, meeting up with friends, either through Zoom, or if you're lucky enough to actually meet up with them in person. These are the connections that we need. Do things that reduce the stress level. One of the things that I'm doing is, I know what really causes me stress is listening to the news at night. So I just cut down on that. You just don't do it. Replace it with something else. Listen to some nice music or read a book or something like that. So it's just being kind. And I think that's not just to other people. I mean, that's been our kind of our modus operandi in the country for quite a while now, is be kind to other people. But you really need to be kind to yourself. Nurture yourself first. So.
Yes, love it. And I love that acronym, like Charlene's saying, a great acronym, so easy to remember. Let's talk a little bit about how you can help people, because I know that for some people, like you said, this is a lifetime, this is a big shift. This isn't just a a diet that you're going to go on. So accountability, right? And inspiration to continue and stay on the path is really important. So I know you have a group coaching program coming up, and I know if people don't want to work with others, they can just work with you one-on-one. So how can people find you? How can they work with you?
Okay, well, what I will do, the program, it's a 6-week program. It's a group program. It will be starting up, I think, at the end of October, beginning of November. And I will put a link down below that you can sign up just to be on my VIP list. And the reason that's important to get on the list is because I keep the enrollment numbers down low. This time it's only 20 people because I want people to feel supported, and I don't want their voice to feel lost in the crowd. I think that is important because it's the accountability and support. I mean, I can tell you the what and the why, but it's the how, and making sure that you actually are able to make sustainable changes over time. That's why it's a 6-week program. And even then, well, and the last time I ran the program, we did see some really good results for people even early on in the program. So the idea is, the base of the program is to start getting rid of some of the toxins, some of the major toxins, in a more controlled and slower manner. I mean, there's lots of detox programs and cleanses out there, but most of them are not designed for people with underlying medical conditions. They can actually cause more problems. So we're just going to take it slow, give you lots of support. So if anyone's interested, or they know someone that they think might be interested, it's just a matter of sign up to the VIP list and you get first crack at enrollment.
Nice. Awesome. And so we'll put that link below. I'll go and get that afterwards. And then otherwise, if they don't want to work with a whole group, they're like, I just want you one-on-one on Zoom or in Auckland in person. How does that look as well?
Okay, I offer a couple of different programs for one-on-one. I'll just focus on the normal one. You need to commit to a 3-month commit to 3 months working with me. Just because we need to make sure that you're doing consistent action. Now, the one thing too, I can help you as much as I can, and I would love to keep you accountable and put the carrot in front of you. The problem is that you're the one that's doing all of the hard yards on this. You're the one that has to, and by you I mean the people in the group or my clients. And so that's what I just want to acknowledge, that the hard work is being done by someone else, by the client. And
but you're there, like, by their side. It's helping them out.
Helping them out, yeah. And so the one-on-one means we meet up every 2 weeks. I provide you with all kinds of resources. And it's mostly just knowing that you are accountable and that you've got the help there, that if you need it, that's important. So 2 different options there. One, the one-on-one individual one, and then there's the group program.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's so cool. You guys can follow Dr. Sharon as well. I think you're on Instagram, are you?
Yes.
Or on Facebook?
Yeah.
Healthy Living with Dr. Sharon. Is that the name of your Facebook page?
Hashimoto Living with Dr. Sharon. And also the information on my website, it's the Hashimoto Health Coach.com. So that's the website. And I think it's Hashimoto Living as the Instagram handle.
Awesome. We will pop all the links below, so that's no worries. Awesome, you guys. Thank you for joining us today. So we're really talking, we dove deep. What we decided to do is really go niche, because this is Dr. Sharon's expert area in terms of the chronic illness, well, specifically, Hashimoto, but anyone with a chronic illness or autoimmune condition, it's like they have kind of that extra layer of stress on their body, and they have limitations they need to be a little bit more aware of, especially now in terms of making sure with their immunity that they don't get compromised. So it really is a mental health issue as well. And as we've been discussing, there's a lot of synergy or overlap, with the emotions and the way that the body presents. So remember to listen to your body, as she said, listen if you've got something going on, think, what did you say? Symptoms are a gift. I love that. That's so amazing. So Dr. Sharon, any final words that you want to say before we bid farewell?
Other than that, I think it's just coming back to the last part of my clean protocol is just look after yourself and be kind, nurture yourself, and take that time. It's well worth it. And it's one of the first steps.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharon, for having us, for sharing your knowledge today. And thanks you guys for showing up. Make sure you check out the other episodes. You can see some of them, all of them on my Facebook page. If you just click on videos, it'll bring up all the interviews that I've done. I've got some amazing people lined up. I've got one coming up about addiction. I've got some other really cool topics I'm going to be talking about, from business through to wellness, through to parenting. And so stay tuned for sure. You can check the rest out on nataliecutlerwelsh.com/video series. And until then, you guys, remember to up your brave, say what you want, and make it happen. See you.